Go for it.
I always like how we start off. We'll have to do a Patreon for the pre. Yeah.
Welcome to the Grappling With podcast. Dr. Chris Hardy and William Walker will take a deep dive into topics covering wellness and prevention, performance, recovery, and injury management. Our mission is to provide the latest science-based information to help you get the most out of your grappling journey, both on and off the mats, and help you overcome any challenges you may be grappling with. Dr. Hardy is a licensed physician and BJJ practitioner, but the contents of the podcast are meant for educational purposes only, should not be taken as medical advice. Please seek out personalized care from your own medical provider prior to implementing any medical treatment or intervention.
No.
Disclaimer.
Said something you'd know. Don't hold my family or friends or professor accountable for anything I say.
You're getting better at it.
That's very succinct.
You mouth up again, I'm going to smack you on the other side of your mouth.
I know. So that's really funny, Bill.
Thank you.
Bill likes to wait till I'm exhausted while he's sitting over there just hanging out, holding cord on the mats there. And then goes, oh, hey, Chris, you want to roll? And I'm like...
And then you tanned your taint while I did a round. And then I rolled with you.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You had your ass in the air, up against the window. The sun was hitting it. And then after I finish a round with a Hawaiian, you walked over and said, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, I rolled with that Hawaiian before you.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
You like this posturing back
He's
and
that
forth?
pudgy one?
He's not pudgy.
I think so.
Mr. Professor Andrea?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's full Hawaiian. He's like an albino Hawaiian.
He said he's half Brazilian.
TMI.
Okay.
Does that mean she hit to him? Okay.
I don't know. I just know we're probably going to get in trouble if we keep going on with that.
You know, I got a couple comments about, did you Google Ken Pinion after the episode?
No, I had some of my coworkers do it, though.
I got a couple people come up to me and say, hey, I didn't think anybody else knew.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, you're a savage.
So did they tell you?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was amazing. I feel just smarter.
You should.
More worldly now.
And your colon should be safer.
Definitely is safer.
So you haven't told me really what we're going to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I think you'll
know.
I think you'll like it. I think I actually did, and I think you're just faking it.
Oh, I definitely forgot, because when you talk, I just kind of...
It's like when you get in when those old guys kind of grab you by the arm, they want to tell you a story.
Yes,
you're
I
like,
do.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Is that how you're kind of feeling?
A little bit.
You just kind of gaze, and as soon as I stop talking, like, oh,
I'm wondering when the Me Too moment's going to stop.
Yeah. Grabbing.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good one, and we've kind of talked about this before, but talking about teaching in general, and how do you feel that improves your jiu-jitsu, and should you teach? And a lot of people, I want to be kind of clear on this. I'm not saying that, if you're a 2-stripe white belt, you should hold yourself up as an instructor for a new person. I want to show you different scenarios where we could probably use teaching on different levels to help you retain information and just really help your learning process. Yeah. But I would like to start with maybe yours and my experiences with, because you teach regularly. Mine is infrequently kind of filling in. And I notice that every time I do, I feel like it helps because what you do automatically, let's say at brown belt level, you may not be aware of some of the subtle things that you've kind of put together over time. But when you have to kind of break that down to someone, like I just recently, yesterday, taught a class, and it just brought back again how that really helps cement some things in my mind. When people ask questions and you learn different cueing things for different people, I think it just helps solidify everything for me. But I'd like to hear what because I noticed personally, as your training partner, since you started teaching that day class, I feel like everything is sharper with you. Like when I think I've seen you're always on a good trajectory of improvement, but I feel like that's increased even a little more since you've been teaching. It's hard to reflect on yourself, but what would you?
I think it's definitely, if you can, like, let's say go through the ranks, right? You got that. I actually had a white belt ask me, a 0 stripe white belt at that, ask me, like, is it okay if I show another new person? Like, they started, let's say, a month ago, and there's a first day person, and they're just making them feel comfortable, and they're just happen to be sitting off on the side, and the 1 day person was kind of like, I don't know what the heck's going on, and when they're talking with them, they're like, well, let me just show you what, we've kind of done last week or something like that. It was like a mount escape. Something like that. But after, they came up to me and was like, is that okay that I do that? Because I don't know what I'm doing too much, but I know more than them at this point. And so in that scenario, I actually said, I think it's okay but I also think you want to be as transparent as possible and be like, just so you know, I just learned this. I probably don't even know all the details, but this is what I do know. If you're comfortable, if the scenario needs it, you can ask maybe someone with more skills or time or something, like, hey, am I doing this right? Am I showing them the right thing? If that's needed, if you guys are getting lost in the weeds where you're showing, because I've had it where I was showing a move and I was like not in class, but maybe like someone asked me a question. Actually, just recently we did that with you asked me to show the matrix.
I did.
Right? And what was it? You asked me to show the matrix, and what I did was I want from De La Hiva.
Right.
And I didn't show it. I was trying to show it how I think you wanted me to, rather than showing what I knew. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, actually.
And I didn't think about it till I was, I think, driving home or something like that. So that's like one scenario where you can be comfortable with something, but then kind of getting lost in the weeds.
Absolutely.
And maybe you're not doing the move or your own knowledge justification.
Well, let me ask this. If I would have said to you the day before, hey, Bill, would you mind, when you come in next, would you mind kind of going over the matrix?
Yeah.
I think then you would have some time to kind of in your head kind of go through all the points and what you want to cover, as opposed to what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I would even probably ask you, which I should have just asked you in the moment, been like, clarified a little something. Because literally I was like, man, this doesn't feel right. Even when I was doing, I was like, I'm not doing something quite right.
Right.
So now I got to go back to the person that you had me show, and probably you, and just kind of give you, like, this is what I should have showed.
See, and this is perfect. This is segues into a point I'd like to make with this whole thing. So let's take that point and go back to our original scenario with the two, with like a guy that's been in there a month and then someone brand new. I think that's fine, especially if you're helping them feel, hey, look, this is a lot. It's new. Here, this is what I've just shown. I really think, though, you really do need to grab like a purple belt or someone that's, and then come by and say, hey, he asked this question. I'm showing him this. Am I on target here? Because, and I'll tell you why, because some of the best learning experiences I've had, I remember a couple when I was a purple belt, and I was kind of, there was a new white belt in, and I was, we were going over technique in class with professor leading and all that. Then he'd walk around as we're doing the technique, and I was kind of showing something, and then he'll walk by and say, yeah, really good, but here's a little nugget here. Here's a little adjustment here. And when I get that, when someone corrects in a good, positive way, corrects me, that sticks forever. And it's because of the way we're wired as humans. You probably heard me talk about the negativity bias, where we can get 100 great comments on YouTube, but if we get one shitty one, which one are we going to focus on? Yeah. It's the shitty one, right? Yeah. Because that's the way our brains are wired. And it's a part of the evolutionary perspective on, survival, basically. If you make a mistake, you don't want to repeat a mistake, basically. Yeah. But to your point, I think that could help that person even more in that context. If they're, an upper belt comes by and like, yeah, that's pretty darn close, but hey, this is what we'd really want you to do. Yeah. That's going to stick with that person for both those people. For sure. Really well, as opposed to, if you keep doing everything that you think, oh yeah, I got this nailed, that doesn't stick as much. So back to your point, if you come in again and say, hey, I showed this, but look, here's some finer points here with both the person, that everyone involved, I think is going to retain that. Yeah. And so I think that's a great point.
Yeah. So I definitely think at lower belts, you can show others technically. I think that's totally fine. Being transparent about your knowledge level is going to be great. And being able to say, I don't know, is huge too. Be like, let me get back to you on that. Or let me ask someone. Or let me try it. Like, that's something I've had where maybe you've even asked, like, hey, what do you think about this? And then, let me do it a few times.
Totally.
And then, okay, we just had that also in the day class. I saw one of the white belts showing kind of something to the other guys of like, hey, I know you want to go here, and like it was kind of like an underhook or a short hook or something, and which was good, but in the context of the move, you wouldn't want to hold it on. Like he was kind of saying, you hold on to it through the move, and I was like, so I kind of called him out, and I said, this is good, but in this scenario, you're not going to do that.
Right. And you know what? He's going to remember that.
Yeah, exactly. And probably three guys that were watching.
Totally.
And they were all talking. Probably will.
Yep.
Valid move, contextually, maybe not appropriate for this exact moment. So through the ranks, yes. Teach, help, assist, all that I think can definitely be
just don't put yourself off like an instructor.
Yeah.
If you're not
being, like I said, saying I don't know is or I'm not familiar with, that's not really my game. I know this pretty well, but actually there was someone when Olivia walked in on me choking Drew unconscious on accident. Someone asked about Gordon Ryan's float passing with the leg pummeling and stuff like that. Familiar with it. Not in my A game, not even really my B game, but I'm familiar with it. I've watched the videos, but I haven't put time into it. So I just said, like, I know it. I'm not super good at it. Wouldn't even say I'm good at it, but I can at least go over some of the principles of it. And then I was showing a couple of the guys that after class. But being upfront about that is kind of big.
But it helps your education too, though, because
big
now
time. Now you're getting reps into working it and
totally
feeling it. But your original question was teaching, helping you progress, almost, right? I would definitely agree that I didn't notice it at first too much, but then I think a good instructor will, at any belt level, black, brown, whatever, will, even if it's a game they know, they will still do further education.
Always.
It's very similar to what, and I will say a lot of instructors do not do that. And I will relate it to your guys' profession, that there are absolutely physicians, doctors, whatever, that they get their degree, they do their residency, they work at a clinic or a hospital or whatever they're doing, and that's where they go from there. Now they just see patients, they collect a paycheck, whatever. And go ahead.
Many will argue that, oh, no, we have to do continuing medical education. But what I've seen with that is they'll find stuff that they like, and maybe not stuff that they need, and stay up on stuff. Yeah. That's absolutely the case. And it is one of the hardest things to do because you can't know everything. One of the hardest things to do is stay up to date in your profession like that. And also you brought up earlier is probably the most important 3 words ever is I don't know. If I tell that to a patient, they're going to trust me too.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to come across and kind of use a bunch of jargon and baffle them with BS.
Guess what? A lot of time people can tell.
Of course you can.
Like a patient doesn't know like half the stuff you're saying, or a white belt doesn't really know all that much jiu-jitsu comparatively.
Yep.
You can still tell when you're like fumbling through and you know.
You can. And if you tell someone I don't know, but hey, I'll find out for you, and we'll kind of you're building a lot of trust there too.
Absolutely.
So that's super important.
And it's same with when it comes to police officers and their continued training throughout the year of having to do a physical test once a year or shooting once a year or once every 6 months or like that. Like that's lower than the bare minimum, basically.
Well, and I think long ago on that podcast, Kyle talked a lot about that.
Exactly.
So I think that's a really good point.
So this can happen in a lot of different fields. I know, not to blow wind in his butt, but our professor, our coach, Andrew, I know he still does this, where he has some of his core curriculum. Yeah. But I know he was seeking out, and he bought some instructionals here or there and watched and studied Andre Galval.
Absolutely.
How he taught something that Andrew knows very well.
Yep.
But Andre Galval teaches just a little differently, obviously, has some different experiences, different details, and he gleaned those, took those, and was like, I'm adding those to how I explain this or whatever.
And that's what a good coach will do.
100%.
Yep.
And that's what I mean. It's like it's something that Andrew's been doing for 15 plus years, probably. Been teaching that move, that sequence for 10 plus, and he's still adding to his knowledge of that one position.
Yep.
A good instructor is going to, in my opinion, is going to do that constantly. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the norm. I think
with any profession, it's not, especially, and people get professionally lazy.
And I think one of the reasons you saw maybe a sharper incline when I started teaching is I'm like obsessed with it. Right. And I don't expect
no shit.
Yeah. I'm like, and I don't expect everyone to be like that. I absolutely don't. But I know I am. So whatever I'm going over, I am just, every night, Olivia just looks over and I'm watching jiu-jitsu in bed as I'm falling asleep. Not good for my sleep. Good for my jiu-jitsu. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
But and a lot of the time, especially if it's Sunday night, the day before class I'm teaching, or maybe Tuesday, or maybe every day, I'm watching stuff, other people teaching what I am going to be showing, or I'm watching competition footage of someone performing the sequence that I'm going over, so I can kind of study it myself.
A perfect example, I'm filling in for you tomorrow, and I have a very specific thing I'm going to do, and what I've been watching is, like you just said, a bunch of people trying to find clips of them all teaching the same thing, and you'll glean, hell, that's a great cue. This is these little things you can say, okay, that's great. And then you can kind of amalgamize those things together, and what do you think is going to be coherent, right to the point, and not, just you can overload them too. So that's a,
and
completely agree.
Yeah. And I think, similar to why, like, you get good from doing a tournament, like they say, like doing one tournament's like 3 months of training or something. Maybe the biggest piece of that is because the lead up, you shrank jiu-jitsu down and you just worked on a couple sweeps, a couple takedowns, a couple submissions, and like that was it.
Trying to sharpen
guard pass. Yep. And you're just sharpening a couple swords or a couple knives that are on your belt, right? And you got so much work in or direct work on those techniques, you leveled up.
Yep.
Right. And then the tournament happens and you get to see how those techniques worked, and if someone was able to defeat those techniques, like you're going to learn from that as well.
Yeah, and you should. You should like, hey, why did that fail?
Yeah.
Right.
And exactly, that's how you come out of it, right? Did I mentally break? Did I mentally like shell up, or was I too loosey goosey? Whatever you. Exactly.
Totally.
I forgot this grip. That's why I couldn't sweep them. I think similarly from an instructor perspective it's the same thing. If the instructor, in my opinion, is doing it correctly, and maybe someone that is, a 10-year black belt or a 15-year black, something extremely seasoned, they probably don't have to do it quite as much. But at least at my level, I'm getting better because I'm hyper studying.
Yep.
For the lead up to classes.
That's right.
So I'm getting so much study time
and
mental
then you're
reps.
implementing it in teaching, and then you're seeing what worked and didn't work, and
through them.
Through them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because
and then you're going correcting things.
Yeah,
and
these classes are smaller that I teach, so 10 to 15 people typically. They're not our big
50
person classes that we have at the nighttime classes.
Yeah,
and so I'm able to touch each group, them ask questions. I can jump in with them, each one of them. I can just stop the whole class and do it, and Q&A and all this kind of stuff. We can really work through some stuff together.
Yep.
Which for sure helps.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to see what your take on it was. I mean, because it's noticeable when someone does that.
Yeah.
You're like, they're getting really sharp with their stuff.
If you have, I mean, maybe you can help with the kids class or something like that. I mean, I know there's a little bit different dynamic there, but still you're helping.
Absolutely.
You're going to challenge your own mind because they're going to be doing something crazy.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to manipulate their little G.I. Joe bodies.
Yeah.
And doing the right thing.
Hey.
Yeah.
Another scenario, let's just do a hypothetical.
Let's do it. I'm naked.
Let's rewind.
You're naked.
Hey.
It was.
There we go.
I love it when Carrie's in the room.
I do too. Yeah. But let's rewind a little bit. Let's say that we'll bring us back to when you and I were both blue belts. So as training partners, I think it's really valuable, especially if you have a little bit of time on your belt, like a senior white belt or a blue belt. You get your sparring rounds, of course, after class and all that. But I think it's valuable to say, hey, next class, let's have one of us teach the other one something. Let's say we want to work on whatever. Let's say we work on deep half.
Yeah.
We'll have one person say, okay, well, I'm going to kind of teach just between the two of you.
Yeah.
And you got, kind of woodshed that back and forth.
We kind of actually thought about doing this with Olivia, where she has to teach me how to do an armbar.
Oh, yeah.
But
just to help her.
It's super valuable.
Absolutely.
And I think that's instead of, actually formally teaching, if you're not, in that position or don't feel comfortable or whatever the situation, getting your small group together and working. And then when you'll inevitably run into a question. Yeah. And then that's when you grab someone, hey, can you mind, kind of looking at this? I think that partnering up and, doing that will be super beneficial.
Did you take this from Andrew?
No.
Okay. Andrew and I have been talking recently about, I don't want to do a spoiler alert. It's not really spoiling anything, but just having like,
what are you talking about?
Encouraging, let's say, like upper belts, which is purple and up, to take someone under the wing.
Yep.
A little bit, like you don't have to literally be like, hey, you're mine, duckling, but like very culty.
Whoa.
But you can at least like attach yourself and like kind of look after really, a lower belt or a few or something like that, and pay attention to what they need to improve on, and and coach them along a little bit. It helps the gym in total, especially when a gym's thriving, unless you get culty and a little too handsy.
Why are you throwing shade at my operation, dude?
I didn't say anything about you. What are you talking about?
First, take them under your wing.
You're getting awfully defensive.
Well, I may or may not be starting a cult within our gym. But there are duck patches around, if you've probably seen.
Oh, I have.
Those are the ducklings.
Yeah.
Right. So I know it's a joke, but that's the whole point of that whole thing.
But it's serious to you. Yeah.
It is serious. We only tithe 50% of the income. I mean, it's very, very fair. We have some offshore accounts and tax-free status. Right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's like Scientology.
You and SBF just hanging out.
That's right. But all jokes aside, the idea that we made it into a joke, but that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Is to have some people that you're really kind of mentoring.
Especially if you're at it. I mean, whether you're at a small gym or not, honestly, but even at a big gym, it can really help the professor.
Yep.
That you're going to help people along, and then it'll help you individually.
Yep.
It'll help the lower belt.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. I think that's a great idea. You know, and whatever you're comfortable with as an upper belt, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You want to I think it's even, I know there's been benefit for Olivia when I was going to start.
Not there?
When I just leave class.
Yeah, pretty much. That's very beneficial for her.
When I'm deciding I'm going to start trying to acquire a new skill within Jiu-Jitsu, and I use her, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to just kind of walk through this.
How many lapels did he grab, Olivia, over the time? Remember when he was doing that whole 6 month of lapel guard?
Oh, yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of entries.
I bet.
Yeah.
I was tired of
Did you actually get ringworm?
Thankfully, no.
Okay.
She's had ringworm.
No, I am not. How dare you?
But I know it helped her to just ignite her thought process.
Totally.
Because she's present in those moments too. So
Yeah.
she's able to almost do reps in her by herself.
Well, since you're talking about her, what's your take on all this?
Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Yeah.
You reading a book over
She's
there?
reading a book again.
No,
What's your take on the topic?
On the topic, what is the topic? I'm just teaching, right?
Yeah, kind of what we've been talking about. She's kind of
I get focused on the cameras. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm just trying to include you.
I agree with everything.
Amazing.
No, well, I mean, going back to like the thing with Bill.
You embarrass me.
And him saying that I should, or the idea of me starting to like.
She hasn't said a single thing yet.
Yes, I have.
She's literally just said, the whole thing.
You know what?
No,
the White House press secretary.
You're killing
That's
it.
what you could do.
Oh my!
You are the grappling with secretary.
Okay. I'm
Speaker.
serious though. You made the comment about me teaching you stuff like armbar, and I think that's great. I think that's something that people probably should do, because I do think that teaching something is a lot different than doing it, and I do think that not only is it a skill to know how to teach something, but also you're going to learn
details that you might,
yeah,
but you don't.
But you don't. Yeah, and then you're going to be more likely when you're doing that move to remember those things.
Thanks for mansplaining that to her. I think she's doing great, by the way.
Mansplainer.
Before you just jumped right in.
You are such a white knight. It's just amazing.
No, it's just an opportunity.
Yeah. Pull your anal beads out and get out of here. So, something else I noticed with teaching is you will become self-conscious that you're gonna forget a detail. Like you want to, when you're showing something, you're like, okay, there's this little trick I do where I put my shoulder forward and then I pull back and then I twist my wrist and then, and as you're showing it, you'll be super self-conscious, so then you'll take it more seriously. Like, let's say just a basic armbar. If you're just starting to show like a friend that's another blue belt in armbar, you're like, okay, then you cut the angle and you put the leg kind of up towards the armpit so you can push on the face and kick your leg around. Well, and you're not even talking about how you have to actually kind of hop the leg up, right? You got to keep their posture down, and then you kung fu move their face, so then you kick around, look in the ear hole, squeeze the knees, like you're forgetting all that stuff. So then you're going to be self-conscious, like, oh, I can't forget all that. But then the curveball, that's a curveball, right?
Yeah, I saw the release, but go for it.
Thank you. Is you have to know your audience.
Yes.
Because if you're showing 1 week white belt every detail in the book to your armbar, guess what? They don't even, you lost them at open up your guard and put your foot on the hip.
Yep. It's same with like overcoaching. It's the same thing.
Totally.
Right? Yeah, too much at once. That's why letting people make some mistakes, just letting them kind of go, observing and like, hey, freeze. Right there.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about this one spot. Like you said, shrink it down.
Yeah.
You know,
You got so mad at me for a second at the tournament because I totally stepped on your wiener.
oh, you freaking did.
Yeah.
When I was trying to coach.
Yeah.
Let me just say, this guy likes to do this little thing. He likes to coach and kind of have a press credential where he'll come out with a camera and he'll get right at Matt's side with the freaking camera. I'm sitting here trying to coach. He goes, he starts coaching him. I'm like, what the fuck? You coach very well. However, the guy's hearing two freaking things.
Oh,
dude.
yeah. And I was like, I'm not even where the coach's seat is.
No, at all.
And like, go to that camera. This is the look I got. So I'm Chris, and he's coaching the this way, and I'm right 10 feet away.
Yeah. You weren't even. You were like 5 feet away,
Maybe
dude.
3.
Yeah.
And then he hears me start yelling some direction. He goes,
I did. I gave
just the most like Miss Butterworth face I've ever seen.
I gave you a real sour look.
Yeah.
Didn't someone else make a comment about you coaching too? Like, as in, I didn't know they allowed 2 coaches.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Jake was coaching Luis, and I was taking photos, and
Yeah, here we go.
Jake was also recording, and I decided to step all over Jake's
Yeah, I like
butthole
that.
as well.
Yeah.
And I just started coaching
Jake and I
Luis.
have talked about it, by the way. Just so you know.
You little salty
Hey, man.
wieners.
It is nothing about your coaching. You're excellent. But you know, you think about you're the competitor out there, and you're hearing some old croaky guy yelling at
Yeah.
you. Then you hear some high pitched squeal
No.
at the same time.
No, that's not right.
And you're like, gosh, man, I don't know who to listen to.
Listen
the
to
guy, the high
manly,
pitched stuff is super
high
annoying. but-
testosterone alpha male. This is who you listen to.
Well, then, right, he should have listened to me.
No, Lawrence Fishburne. That's me.
Fishburne? Fishborn?
Fishburne.
No, it's not burn.
Dude, I'm Barry White. That's all I got to say. Yeah.
Don't ham it up. You sound like the Chipmunks.
Or Shaft. Hello.
I don't know about that. You sound like Charles Barkley. But yeah.
Anyway, we digress, right?
Yeah, digest, you mean.
We digest.
What else you got? Or is there more? Or what? Did I answer your question?
Wow, yeah, you answered my question.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to draw Olivia in,
Yeah.
getting her out of her whatever
My
she was
hole
doing
hole?
over there.
I was
Bubble?
coaching her.
That is-
And
I mean, but no, I agree. I mean, I've trained enough people at like jobs and stuff like that it is actually kind of funny when you're going through and you're so used to doing something that then you realize as you're explaining how to do something, you're like, oh, I forgot that detail. Oh yeah, make sure you do this. Make sure you do that. But you do it automatically because
exactly.
Yeah, for your own growth, it's good.
well, yeah, trying to have to remember those things
And verbalize what you intuitively do.
yes.
Which is because she's asked me many times to be like, why don't you show me this craziness that you do? I'm like, well, part of it is it feels kind of intuitive when I'm doing it.
Oh, so you're basically like, that's like asking Picasso,
Yeah.
show me how to paint.
Yes, I'm a wizard. And you want me to teach you magic, but it's in my blood.
Olivia, I'm so sorry.
well, we were actually having a discussion about intuitive
Yeah.
kind of.
And being a pervy little freak, and you came up.
That is not true.
Sorry, different combo. What were we talking about?
Like intuitive rolling and how I was saying, I don't know if it's necessarily intuitive because you made it seem like it's as if you just have this
No,
No,
you're
keep going.
natural essence
Keep going,
of being
keep going.
able to know how to do jujitsu. And I was like, no, it's probably because you've watched enough videos.
Did
that
not
you-
make it seem like that.
Yes, you did. You
I
said
just
that
closed my eyes, and it's there.
Yeah, man. This is juicy. I like this.
Well, because
I did not
like he
sound-
said, when I asked him if he can show me, he's like, well, I don't know. It's just intuitive. Like, it's not teachable.
I didn't say it like a douchebag like that. Well, I don't know. It's just intuitive.
Are you?
She's just.
Olivia, please continue.
She
I love
can't
this.
talk right now. She's laughing so hard.
Olivia, I love this. Keep going.
I'm just saying, and then we had a discussion about how I don't think it's actually just intuitive, as if it just like
She used
comes
air
to-
quotes. She used air quotes.
it just comes to him from
Roasting me.
somewhere above, and so yeah, I was like, I'm sure it's because you just watch a lot of jujitsu,
and you've seen it enough times that it comes to you, but you don't know where it's coming from.
Oh,
because you've watched enough.
I'm going to ask a huge favor of my spouse here real quick. Would you mind grabbing my cell phone for me? There's something on there that I promised our professor.
Oh, yeah. But while I'm gone,
Uh-huh.
so since we're talking about how amazing Bill is at learning jiu-jitsu,
Bill is amazing.
we
at
do
teaching.
know that there's one person that catches on much quicker.
Oh,
Tom?
Oh, Tom?
Yeah, because Bill said how amazing he is. And
Oh.
he caught on so quickly, but Tom is a little better.
Yeah,
Tom,
Bill
yeah.
humble bragged at lunch that time.
Oh,
He was like, I'm like amazing and really quick at catching on, but this guy is even better.
What's that face, Bill?
That's the face of truth.
Really, Bill? Remember, all the words you say are your own. Just so you know.
you firing me up.
I like it.
I'm gonna get kicked out of church. I'm gonna get fired, all because you're ramping me up right now. You two over there, you're gonna have to get a job.
I think we call this.
I'm gonna be begging on the street.
I think we call this a deflection and
Okay, first of all, I didn't say it like that.
diffusion of responsibility.
You geriatric. I did not say it like that, first of all. I said that I was talking to someone, a black belt,
Okay.
and they were talking about how this fella that we call Tom, quote unquote,
Quote unquote.
is like really good for how long he's been training.
Absolutely.
And I was like, dude, I know. I was like, I feel like I've progressed pretty quickly, and he's trouncing me.
That's super humble brag.
That sounds different than I'm so good. I'm Bill.
Hey, Olivia, have you ever known Bill to embellish anything?
Yes.
First of all, I'm allergic to pickles.
Do you know how
I can't
often
eat
I
relish.
have to, like, correct
Oh my gosh. You
Dude, it feels like your whole world's crumbling down upon you right
because I'm in a
He hates
room
it,
full of
too.
communists.
now. Yeah. Well, we're more like, I don't know. I don't think we're communists.
Marxists,
No.
Mao supporters.
No.
I don't want to say the N word. Not that N word.
What were you?
The German one.
Oh,
German.
oh, Nazis. You can still say that.
Yeah.
No.
Topic.
You
a
may
hot
feel
dog.
oppressed right now, but
I do feel oppressed.
I know. That's how I feel usually in this. I feel like the punching bag here, and I just
because
take
you're a
the
little
hits.
dough like a punching bag.
I am a little doughy. Luckily, Carrie's not here for that one.
Yeah, she'd start talking about your manhood.
Oh my God! Let's not. Let's not go.
She brought that up in front of your mom.
And did my mom flinch?
No, she kind of chuckled.
Exactly.
I was like, what kind of weird place am I?
They're freaks.
Circus animals.
For sure.
That was
Those are,
amazing.
yeah. And then thus me. You can see why I'm the way I am.
Yeah, I always thought it was something in elementary school, but I get it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Kind of on topic, kind of not.
Okay.
But what do you think is the best way of, like, learning? Because
Oh,
we were
man.
having this debate, too. Because we're like, because you know how so many people are like, drilling is, like, the best way. Then some people think rolling's the best way. And then some people think situational sparring is the best way.
You know what? There are whole books and whole courses written on learning theory. And I'm certainly not an expert, but what I have gleaned on them is it's so individual. You'll have people that are like auditory learners. They're like in med school, I saw this a ton because there's such a fire hose of information.
Yeah.
That people would use different. I'm very visual, so I would create like notes with like color coding, and so I could kind of almost picture my notes.
Yeah.
Some people that doesn't work for at all, and they're really good at. They want to hear things. They'll tape the lectures and listen.
I'm like you.
Mhm.
I will, like, somehow be able to
And there's
visualize
certain
notes.
people that are absolutely kinesthetic learners. It's like, okay, I can see this and I can hear it and I can whatever, but until I actually put my body through this,
Yeah.
it's not going to really stick. I'm kind of like that too. I'm a
Combination.
visual
Yeah,
kinesthetic type
same.
of thing where some people can like look at something and I'm like, I'm going to implement that right now.
That's like Bill, I think.
Yeah, I think he is too, because it's almost like he can watch something and
Break
very
it down.
quickly
Yeah.
implement it, where it takes me a little longer to kind of get my motor patterns going, But I don't think there's a right answer.
So you don't think like
It's completely individual.
Like
I totally think it's individual.
but I'm not necessarily taking into account YouTube videos. I'm saying
I know what you're
some
saying.
people say drilling.
Yep.
And then other people
talking about all
like,
the physical
Keenan.
training stuff.
Yeah, Keenan might be like, well, no, you shouldn't just drill at
Well,
a pace of 0.
It's creating context of what drilling means, which
we've talked about
gotten
before.
Or even flow rolling, which is illegal to say in our gym.
Well, you can't say that.
No. You get kicked out. And so I'll get a text about that later.
I hope so.
So, but what does drilling mean? What does whatever mean? That's and I think what Keenan was talking about was that zero resistance drilling has a very small window of positive impact. Like the usefulness of it is very small. There's usefulness to it, but how useful is most gyms will do it for long periods of time.
Like longer than they probably.
Yes, and this is Keenan's opinion. I'm not subscribing or saying yes or no. Otherwise, I'm just saying his opinion is that zero resistance drilling is only good for the very introduction. I think Danaher says this too. The very introduction of a move. Right. Now, drilling with resistance, maybe 30%, something like that. Resistance. Shout out to Ahmed for being good at tapering his percentage of resistance. But
he's doing good.
I'll just give him crap.
He's doing good.
That's more beneficial.
But wouldn't that drilling just be like situational sparring, meaning like you go into a position and you're like,
a little bit.
I want to work just controlling the lapel, and so I would just
there's an absolute cross,
there.
for sure.
Because either drilling is like 0% really, or then you go into rolling where it's like.
But that's why you can call it situational sparring, situational drilling. Like they do turn in the same thing. Now, a lot of time, I'd say most gyms, at least when I've hopped around quite a bit, will treat situational sparring as situational sparring. What I mean is, okay, we start in this position, and then it's balls to the wall, first person to score, escape, whatever it is, and and then reset. Situational drilling would. Okay, we're not going balls to the wall. Give me 30, 50, 70% resistance, right? And then reset. So it's a little bit more tactful.
I know usually during competitions or coming up to competitions, Andrew would do like those things where it's like you have to open the guard and you have a minute or 30 seconds or whatever. I kind of would like to do that again more because I do think when you put a time on it, that's helpful because then there's that urgency, but also...
Well, then you both also know, okay, we're going balls to the wall for 1 minute.
Yeah.
But you have to beat that minute. Like, you can't just go till the minute. You have to do something within that time.
Yeah.
So,
But then the fact that it's such a short time frame, so it's not 5 minutes of going 100, where you're like dying at the end of it. Like you're just within this situation of just open the guard and pass.
For example, exactly. Last week, because we have a tournament coming up this coming weekend, I had them warm up with some stand-up stuff. Just literal grip fighting. So whoever's turn it is, they have 3 minutes, and the partner that they're going against needs to have, I think it said 30 or 40% resistance with their grip fighting. So if the person comes in real slow, lackadaisically,
you can intercept it.
Yeah. Break that grip. Okay. But if they actually like set it up 1, 2, okay, they got it. You can try breaking the grip. And I was just instilling the grip fight and then first movement. If you're going to do a collar drag, if you're going to do a sail, something like that, then you're going to turn off balance them.
So you're going to set it up, right?
Yeah, just do your first movement. Get your grip fight, first movement.
Got it.
Grip fight, first movement. And then after, I think, a couple rounds of that, of 3-minute rounds, then we ramped up into about 50%, 60%. This is just the warm up to get going, and then also acquire some skill and timing and stuff like that. So that's a form of drilling, but I'm trying to reel them in, because if I don't tell them 30% or 60 or whatever, absolutely it's going to be just grip fights city, and they're going to be boxing.
Pretty much, yeah.
So it's almost like you have to reel them back a little bit, and then or they're going to go for full-on takedowns.
Right.
There's a place for that.
Right.
But we're just warming up. We're just getting our body moving. Emphasize down a little bit, because you can't do your move unless you get correct grips.
Correct.
You can't pass the guard unless you get your grips first, right?
Yep, that's right.
And so often we get greedy and we're like, oh, my foot's in the right position.
I'm
Big
gonna.
slide.
Yep. And didn't work.
That's a knee shield right there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, I like that. I like that quite a bit. But I think there's a value to all these approaches.
And it's going to be individualistic, I think.
Yeah.
Is going to be the big thing, because how you learn is a little different from how I learn, for sure.
Well, the thing is, I think also what I want has changed over time. When I was a white belt, rolling sounded fun. Like, this is what I want to do, right? As a blue belt, I think I was geared more towards just drilling, but not situational.
You kind of
just
fell in love with
drilling.
reps.
Yes.
You were like a numbers reps kind of person.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do 50 barambolos. When she was a blue belt, I think is when you're starting to do bolos. And it was like she just wanted to enter the bolo 50 times.
But now, as a purple belt, I'm changing more towards, for me, it feels like at this stage, it makes more sense for me to work on situations, because when I'm doing rolls, there's going to be situations that I get into that I need to work on specifically, and having time and like actually having someone give me decent resistance is going to be more helpful for me than having no resistance at all, because that's just not applicable for me in those situations, because I know
you have a base skill of movement.
Exactly. I just need to work on being quicker and more efficient, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As opposed to a new white belt getting those motor skills.
Yeah.
That's a different scenario.
You can't even tech up.
It's who you are, where you're at, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's also a challenge of running a gym.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many people have different learning styles, and that's a big thing to kind
when
of
I
tackle.
see we got 50 people in there, and I see Andrew walking around, Andrew and I just talked about this, and I'm just like, because let's say you show the technique, people break off.
Yep.
And then maybe there's 10 minutes until you show maybe the next part of the technique, or just there was so many questions that you got to interrupt and come back. But depending on the time, he might only get to two groups.
Well,
because there's so many.
And that was what was helpful yesterday when you had Brian and yourself walking around with me.
Brian had a baby in his hands.
He was multitasking. Well, he's a black belt. He can do that.
Do it.
But that was super helpful, because then, you know, we're dividing up and real time kind of watching, correcting.
And that was at like 35 people.
Right. And that wasn't 50, but it was still, you know, still large enough, right? Yeah. You know, I think if each instructor it's so hard. I mean, ideally, let's just say if you had in an ideal world, having about 10 people under your purview, which would be like, you know, maybe 5 groups, is really doable. Having, you know, 20 groups, or more,
it can start to get pretty.
Yeah, it's tough. So, it's a challenge, and you know, I don't think people really understand how hard that is to coach like that. So, but anyway, I think that's a great question, Olivia.
And last thing on the learning thing, we did have a question from the YouTubes about skill acquisition, and it kind of went back to something we've talked about previously. They asked, is doing, and I don't remember what episode we talked about this, but we have touched on it.
The warm-up one where we talked about,
I think it was before that, but they asked the question on that episode, and it had to do with the skill acquisition. And so is it better if someone has the ability to do a day class rather than a night class for skill acquisition, to do that if they have the ability, because they were questioning like so many people, they drone in front of their computer, or they're maybe working a laborious job.
Yeah.
And
mental fatigue.
And then they go to a class at night.
Yep.
And now we've talked about from the like circadian rhythm perspective that training earlier can be better. Even a morning training can be.
Or kind of late afternoon is kind of where we're at our physical peak.
2-ish something.
2 to 4, yeah.
Yeah. So what about that scenario from a skill acquisition, a mental skill acquisition standpoint?
It's a really good question, and I think it's one of those that we can't always optimize everything.
Sure.
The bottom line is, logistically is more people can make a class, right? But I think if we're in an ideal world and we could all be fully rested before we came to class, and and the time of the day is more such that what have you done that day? Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Because if I have a day off and I have a kind of a relaxing day, I'm not really doing a whole lot of mentally, and then I go to night class, I think will be just as good. I think it has to do with what you've done that day. I mean, if you have the option, you find out what works better for you. If you have the option of going to a day class, or especially some academies will have morning classes too.
Yeah.
Try it and see what works better for you.
Yeah, like 7 a.m. or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's always tough. We always do the best we can. I don't think the drop-off is crazy huge as far as skill acquisition. What I think would be a problem, let's say you had a super hard, heavy physical job, and you're actually physically, mentally exhausted. It's going to affect your skill acquisition. It just is. But does that mean you shouldn't go?
Yeah.
You're still going to do a lot better of skill acquisition going to class than not going. So I don't know, man. It's a tough one. It's always a balancing act.
Yeah. I see you got your old person cricket phone out.
Yeah. So
with the big buttons.
Yeah. Well, I have the
you
big
still
buttons.
got to use your
extra large text.
Yeah, extra large text. He still has to use his
I
glasses.
do. Thank you for hating on old people.
No problem, Bill Nye.
I have a I have a whole AARP kind of hit squad that's going to come and have a talk with you. So don't worry about it. So this is from our professor, specifically for you.
There.
And he took an excerpt. And this is very nice because, Andrew's been reading, as we've talked about before, been reading.
Okay.
There's this great book called Sapiens. If you guys haven't read it, it's fascinating. It's about the origin of the human species and all that. It's kind of neat. I want to read an excerpt. And you guys tell me at the end, especially the last line, who you guys think about. And it's almost like this author knew someone that we all know.
Oh, dear.
So, here I will read. They're talking about basically back in hunter-gatherer days, sources of food and, how we dealt with those. A typical forager 30,000 years ago had access to only one type of sweet food, ripe fruit. That's it. If a Stone Age woman came across a tree groaning with figs, that's kind of odd. The most sensible thing to do was to eat as many of them as she could on the spot before the local baboon before the local baboon band picked the tree bare. The instinct to gorge on high-calorie food was hardwired into our genes. Today, we may be living in a high-rise apartment with overstuffed refrigerators, but our DNA still thinks we are in the savannah. That's what makes some of us spoon down an entire tub of Ben & Jerry's when we find one in the freezer and wash it down with a jumbo Coke.
That is literally... That's amazing. I don't know anybody who likes Coke and ice cream, like Coca-Cola and ice cream, but this man does.
Who's this man? Who are you talking about for those people listening?
Oh, Bill.
Yeah. And I thought it was almost like the author was channeling him. And I think that's what our professor was trying to just kind of bring up. I thought it was kind of...
Oddly, not to crap on your own book writing.
My book?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I am the author of that book.
Sapiens?
Yes.
Are you?
Yeah. I wrote it. It's about me. Because I wrote it.
Okay.
So you're welcome.
We'll have the author on and actually we'll have a conversation.
And I'll ask him, be like, why are you looking in my window? Because I did happen to have a chocolate fudge
Shake today.
shake on the way over, and I washed it down with a Pepsi.
He did.
Weird. So it's almost like Professor Andrew knows what he's talking about here. And when he found this passage in the book, he sent it to me immediately.
You know what's funny, though?
What?
He actually read me that chapter
Did he?
before he even sent it to you. He's like, I'm sending this to Chris. This is ridiculous. And then he read me the whole damn thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is kind of anticlimactic for you.
For me, yes.
I thought it was
I
great.
didn't know about it, so I
Yeah.
loved it.
I didn't tell Olivia about it.
So he did an Olivia, and instead of waiting for it to happen, he
it
went
was
right
like
to
midnight
the end.
too. He was just reading this, and he just sends me a video. Just so happy that this book
He was very pleased with
called out
this.
my lifestyle.
I thought that was fantastic.
Slightly offensive, but it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
Then we found another Instagrammer today that is basically my spirit animal.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
It definitely
talking
is.
about donuts the size of baby torsos.
Yeah. I think his delivery though is
It's impeccable.
is
Definitely
very
my
Carrie,
God.
you're gonna think it's hilarious.
Yeah, you definitely have to show Carrie that one. It's
A couple tiger tails.
I didn't. Why
He-
did you just go like this?
I don't know, just kids. When I think of tiger tails,
Yeah, it is. It's very
I've never had a tiger tail.
it's very Appalachian.
yeah, Tom would appreciate it.
Dom would appreciate it.
What? Do we have anything else?
Were you gonna bring up the neck?
The what?
injury? Neck
Oh, then
injury?
yeah.
Oh, the neck thing.
Yeah. Just to kind of touch.
As I bring this up, I just want to give a shout out to one Eli Solheim,
Oh yeah.
Andrew's son
Mm-hmm.
by blood, and he
Does he have any sons that aren't by blood?
we don't know actually. And then he went 3-0 at his first
I
wrestling
saw.
tournament.
Killed it.
Yep, shout out. And then also shout out to Carrie Ann. She went 3-0 at this invite tournament in Seattle.
Another no-gi submission only.
Yep, and submitted in regulation, all three.
Amazing.
It was cool.
Yeah, no one else. Well, obviously, no one else got that because she won.
Yeah. Yep. There
There was a crown involved. I saw.
there was a crown. It was actually kind of heavy too.
It looked
It
like
was.
It almost looked like a tiara.
It was definitely more on the tiara side. But that didn't stop me from wearing it.
Did you wear it?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you would.
And
Well,
I
you
got photos.
deserved it because you were the coach.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
It didn't have anything to cling to though on it.
No, it was a little slick. So, all right.
Okay.
It'll make sense later. So we had something a few episodes ago where we talked about someone that actually had a almost like life-threatening injury,
Oh right. Yeah.
where they got stacked while triangling someone, and they heard a pop, but they just figured it was their neck getting messed up, and they did have soreness, but it wasn't until a couple weeks later that they started having droopiness
Yep.
in their face.
Yeah, we talked about the cranial nerve stuff and all that stuff, right?
you know what they're and I didn't have a lot of details that I remembered, and you were kind of pontificating a little bit of like what could have that? It could have been a pre-existing injury
Because we didn't know all the details.
exactly.
Right.
What's cool? He listens, and he made a comment and just kind of gave a little bit more detail.
This is actually him though, not a bot.
This is you never know.
Okay.
You never know.
Okay, but it seems like it's
I'm
him.
confident it's him.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna read
Yeah,
kind of
definitely.
what he said, and we can kind of expand on it. He said, "Hey guys, I'm the dude with the injured neck. Official diagnosis was a left internal carotid artery dissection. A 3 millimeter by 4 millimeter blood clot formed in the flap of the dissection, but the clot didn't move because the artery was 100% occluded." What does that mean, occluded?
Occluded means filled up,
Okay.
basically.
And he says the blood flow literally shut off on the left carotid. Only my right was functioning. The facial droop was called Horner's syndrome, which I think you did mention. That resulted from...
I didn't mention Horner's syndrome.
Oh,
what I did mention is Bell's palsy.
Oh, okay.
This is different.
He says it was called Horner's syndrome. That resulted from the dissection. Basically, my neck was hyperextended too far when being stacked/spiked in a triangle choke, and my skull created a tear within the artery wall. Pretty scary stuff. He still has a little bit of chronic neck pain here and there. But this was, if I remember right, it was 4 to 6 years ago, something like 6 years, I think. So, yeah.
So this is really interesting. So
wild.
Very wild. And so dissections can happen. What they are, artery has layers to it. You can think of it as layers of insulation. There's different muscular layers because the artery has the pulse. It has to contract, right, to move blood. And there's a very inner layer that has the lining of it, basically. A dissection is when the layers kind of get separated.
Okay.
You can imagine. It's dissecting apart, right? Which is a lot of damage internally to the artery. Anytime there's damage inside a blood vessel, the body comes in with platelets and all the things and forms a clot. It's a healing thing. Unfortunately, that clot can become occlusive. That's what meaning they can occlude or block something. Or even worse, that clot can break off, like we talked about, and go, it didn't sound like that clot moved. Okay.
Yeah, I think they had to surgically remove it.
Which is probably better because if the clot would have moved upstream, or downstream, I should say, to smaller vessels, it could have blocked out those completely to that area and basically killed part of the brain. Luckily, the brain has what we have collateral circulation, so you don't just have one pipe, the big ones anyway. So like, if I close down the left side of your neck, you still have the right one, and then some arteries coming up through the vertebrae in the back to actually keep supplying the brain. That's super scary, though.
Yeah.
Horner syndrome is an autonomic disorder. There's part of the autonomic nervous system, the things that, pupil dilation, things like that. Also associated with some of the nuclei of cranial nerve 5. You don't need to know that, but that dives down into the cervical region. It's one of the odd things about that cranial nerve. Anyway, it's very serious.
Yeah.
We see dissections in the neck also very rarely, but they do happen with chiropractic manipulation of the neck, and it's usually due to the vertebral arteries, which are the ones going up through the vertebrae themselves.
They're not quite as big as the ones.
They're not. They supply the back of the brain, right? So these kind of things, although rare, certainly can happen. And that's why, we always talk about this in class, and Professor talks about it all the time about getting stacked. How to prevent, how cutting an angle, and or if you're in a bad position, just tap, right? It's not worth it. Yeah. Because you get that neck in an odd position, and it promotes, especially with those vertebrae around there, promotes a shearing stress on those arteries. Yeah.
So stacking people in an intelligent way, as well as
stacking their hips instead of their neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, if you're being stacked, how to kind of help yourself.
And he talks about this all the time in class, how to kind of move underneath it and spin underneath a stack, or just if you're in a real bad position, look, just tap, man.
So he got to the point where his face was drooping.
Yeah.
I mean,
face and eyelid, Horner syndrome especially, you'll have all kinds of disorders of, how the tearing takes place in the eye, all the stuff that happens automatically. Pupil dilation, that's actually a little separate, but the drooping also, cranial nerve 7 can be involved with. Cranial nerve 5, though, is also, not only does it carry some autonomics, but it's also involved with the muscles of mastication and clenching and things like that of the jaw.
So was he close to dying?
So if that clot would have broken off from the internal carotid and gone downstream to where there isn't collateral circulation.
Yeah.
Because many parts of when you get to the smaller vessels, there will be a section that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Right. And if you get what's called a terminal branch of an artery.
Yeah.
If that gets blocked, that is it's like taking, if you have a garden and you have this elaborate sprinkler system, but one section you just pinch off, that place ain't getting any water. But if you have, you could have multiple sources going in.
Yeah.
If you pinch it off upstream, like near the source, the other supply can water everything.
Yeah.
But if you go to one of those little in things.
So if he was like,
Yeah.
you know what, my face is drooping a little bit. Let's say the thing didn't break off.
Yeah.
He's like, my face is drooping, but it'll probably come back. You know, he just got a nice little fresh dose of Fauci juice, so maybe he's just chalking it up to that.
That was a good slip in.
Thank you.
Wow.
But it didn't break off.
Yep.
How does that progress?
So it's not good. So you have damage to that artery. So things happen. We see this all the time in older people that have that smoke, especially, or have a smoke with high blood pressure. Because people always, they blame cholesterol, right? Okay. Cholesterol is like a patch on a pipe. It's basically one of the things it does. We've talked about that. Go back and listen to our episode very early on, that whole cholesterol episode we did. But when there's damage to the internal parts of an artery, you get a healing response, right? And part of that is forming this little fibrous cap on it, which is trying to heal the artery. But the problem is there's not much room in there. So if you leave that over time, and especially if you have other things going on, if you have any high blood pressure, any other kind of diabetes or anything like that going on, that can get worse and worse, and the plaque itself will become calcified.
Yeah.
And over time, it can actually then break off. And because you may not ever know it, because you're still getting enough collateral blood supply to function normally. You're like, that happened. It's feeling better now.
Yeah.
But if that would have broken off later, it could have been catastrophic for him. So the bottom line is, if you start getting facial drooping, you need to go get seen right away, because you don't know what's going on. It could be something as simple as Bell's palsy, which usually most people recover from, but it could be something worse. Yeah. Especially, and that just shows you guys, if you're caught in super tight guillotines, or you're trying to fight like it's you're in a UFC
you got
title
money on the line.
No, man, the neck is very vulnerable. So, and especially to being stacked. So it's not worth it. Learn how to keep yourself safe. And if you are stacked in a position you can't get out of, just tap.
Yeah, for sure.
It ain't worth it.
For sure.
Thanks for the follow-up on that. That was very, very interesting. And I appreciate, what's his name?
Mark.
The guy,
Mark.
He gave his name? Yeah, Mark. I appreciate you sending us some additional info on that. That's really good for helping people, like kind of a cautionary tale.
Absolutely, because you never really hear about serious injury besides, my neck hurts. It's like, no, it can be pretty bad.
Yeah. So that was a great one.
I
You got anything else?
The fact that Bill said you were pontificating.
Oh, I was pontificating, I think.
Good usage, right?
Pontificating means saying something in a pompous way.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh.
Good usage, right?
Okay, well then, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for defending me. Because I'll have to listen back to the episode, see if I actually was pontificating. I don't think I was.
You were. How dare you, Bill? Oh, was that you mocking me?
No,
No, that's when Bill doesn't have a comeback.
Yeah. So he
Nice
just
one,
makes
guys.
noises.
He goes to that voice. That's his alter ego.
How about people just send emails to grapplingwithpodcast@gmail.com or a comment on the YouTube page?
Yeah, I think so. This has been a very good episode for you, Bill. I've been very happy about this, how this turned out.
You guys pulled my pants down and all laughed, and it hasn't felt good. Thank you, Carrie, for looking at me like you're embarrassed. Okay. I'm not embarrassed. Like and subscribe if you can.
And real quick before we leave, we're going to do a podcast on regenerative medicine.
Yes.
With Carrie, talking about stuff you can actually use to actually maybe repair some tissue. It's kind of up and coming in the medical field, so stay tuned.
Peace out.